Greetings and welcome to the Voices Less Said podcast show with Dr. PMAC, a show where I bring in ordinary folks that are doing extraordinary things in their community. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Nancy Rosenow. And Nancy is a founder and retired chief executive officer of the nonprofit Dimensions Educational Research Foundation that operates out of Lincoln, Nebraska in the USA, and whose mission is to inspire joy and wonder in children, educators, and communities with a heart-centered approach to early education. Her work supported the major departments of the foundation, which include the Nature Explore program, Exchange Press, Dimensions Research Initiative, and Dimensions Education programs. The foundation also serves as an administrative partner of the World Farm Foundation on Early Care and Education. Nancy has had experience as an early childhood educator, as a director, a researcher, and nonprofit executive, and she has spoken at national and international conferences, written numerous articles for educational and environmental publications. Nancy is also an author. She's authored the books Encouragement Every Day and Heart-Centered Teaching Inspired by Nature. And Nancy has also co-authored two other books, Learning with Nature and Growing with Nature. She currently serves as editor-in-chief of Exchange Press for Dimensions Foundation. Join me today on Voices Less Said with Dr. PMAC as I have this wonderful conversation with Nancy Rosenow. This conversation has been a long time coming, and I know you're an extremely busy person. You've had to sort of step into multiple roles and do so much work. So thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. So I'm going to sort of dive in. Nancy, as I was reflecting and preparing for our conversation, your life's work has been about inspiring joy and wonder, and you say with a heart-centered approach to early education. So if you had to tell a child, perhaps in one story, why joy and wonder matter so much, what would that story sound like?
Well, for my own practice, I was a director of a program where we were invited to be part of a research project. And at the time, they were looking at the effects of children being inside on their devices all the time and not being outside as much. And I have to say, at that time, we had a traditional playground that was just blacktop and plastic climbing structures, no nature. Yeah. But as part of this research project, we started looking at what would happen if we added more nature to children's surroundings, and if we really looked and understood what was happening for children when they were getting to, do more hands-on work outside with nature. It was truly life-changing. The teachers I was working with saw that what was happening, they were always good teachers, but they were the kinds of teachers that they always wish they could be, because children were able to be do the kinds of things that every young child needs to do. And that sense of connecting with the natural world, seeing the wonder of nature, being able to be their authentic selves, it was truly life-changing. And then we started a big research project, which turned into our Nature Explore work, and now we're helping people create outdoor classrooms all over the place. So it's really, but it was experiencing it for myself and watching the transformation in the teachers and in the children. And so, it just made all the difference in how I see our work with young children.
So that's interesting. And I kind of feel guilty because perhaps, I've started it right in the middle. And so if you can perhaps even think about your own childhood, right, and go back to when did nature first, become a teacher to you, and how did that sort of experience shape your?
That's such a great point. I grew up in the time where we had free-range childhoods. We could go outside. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, but it was in a suburb that still had lots of natural spaces around that we could go exploring in, and really. After school and in the summers, our parents just said, go outside and play. And we would go down to the creek and try to dam up the creek, and we would build structures with branches. And I just got to do all that. I realized later, though, that my own children, I didn't realize that at the time, I didn't realize it wasn't till later that I realized my own children weren't having that kind of a free range childhood. We weren't living in a place where they could just go out and
Mm.
play. And the children in our
Yeah,
programs, were not having that kind of a free range
yeah,
childhood anymore. And we weren't providing them with any nature in our programs. What I feel like we're needing to do as adults today
mm.
is, because every child doesn't have the chance just to go out and roam
Yeah,
around in nature, we need to bring it to them.
yes,
So I am really passionate about trying to help every program for children bring in nature so they can have that kind of wonderful exploration wherever they live. In fact, we're doing it in places like the heart of Los Angeles, where children aren't living close to any parks or any nature,
right.
but they're having it in their early childhood
I,
programs.
I love that. And so, I mean, you're bringing in the organizational piece too, right? And so you've helped, I mean, you found that you've helped build Dimensions Educational Research Foundation into what perhaps I would call a multifaceted organization. You've got Nature Explore, you've got Exchange Press. And so when you look at all of these projects, what common heartbeat do you see running through them?
Oh, I can tell you, with us, it was always what is
Mhm.
needed and what can we do to help. It was never, when people say we had a 20-year plan and we followed it step by
Yeah,
step, really, that was not the path that I took. The path was, oh, look, we're discovering something.
yeah.
We're discovering the power of bringing nature to children. And people
Mhm.
started asking us, can you help us do that? And we realized, oh, there's a need for
Yeah.
this. And they started asking things like, but can you do workshops to help our teachers understand this?
Yeah.
And Nature Explorer just grew very organically. Yes, we did research projects. We figured out the, research-based
Yeah.
principles for creating outdoor classrooms. We figured out how to do workshops. It all grew very organically.
Mhm.
The same with Exchange, that I knew the power of Exchange because as a young
Yeah.
director, I would read those articles and they were like my
Yeah.
lifeline.
Yeah.
And when Bonnie and Roger Nagebauer said, we're wanting to retire. We're
Mhm.
looking for someone who loves Exchange as much as we do. And I thought, oh, we could do that. And so we took over Exchange. The same with being an administrative partner for the World
Yeah.
Forum. It was those, we're looking for someone who can help. And I think the inspiration for everything was always, here's a need, and it's one that we can help
Yeah.
with. And so it makes sense for us to do it. And we kept adding things based on a need that was out there and our ability to do
Yeah,
it,
that's so interesting, Nancy, and I love hearing the story, and I'm sure my listeners too, at whatever stage in their careers, I also sort of enjoying just how you respond, and so I think about you as perhaps a young director, and you're saying that Exchange Press was one of those publications you'd look out for. Nancy, as you would know, as a seasoned leader, that many leaders perhaps struggle to keep their organizations people centered as they grow, and I just watch you and how you connect relationships and people. What practices have helped you, Nancy, to stay grounded in relationships and values, right, while you're leading your nonprofit?
Yeah, it the same thing that I started out doing when I was a teacher, a young
Mhm.
teacher. My philosophy was always, I need to look at every child and say, who is this child? Who are they trying to become, and how can I help them to help them become their authentic
Yeah.
selves? I really felt like as a leader in an
Mhm.
organization, my role is always to look at each person and say, who is that person? What are the strengths that they uniquely have? What's important to them? Who do they want to become? And how can I support them?
Mhm.
It's very much a heart-centered, people-centered approach, looking at, each person as an individual. And then when people feel that kind of support and that permission to be who they truly
Mhm.
are, they will bring amazing things to an organization, things I could never have imagined. And so much of the growth of the
Yeah.
organization came from people with ideas and, with unique talents. And it really is amazing how when everyone feels
Yeah.
supported, magical things can
Magical
happen.
things can happen. That's so amazing. And so speaking with you, like I feel like I'm in a sort of like in a
in a candy store, because as an entrepreneur, as a non-profit, like there's so many things that you've done. I'm like, okay, so what other questions should I ask? So I've got tons of questions. Sometimes I might just go in a different angle. And you serve also as editor in chief, Nancy, of Exchange Press. And I can imagine you're always in constant dialogue with ideas, not only from the US, but from around the world. What trends, perhaps, in early childhood practice are exciting you the most right now, as you sort of, engage with folks from around the world, as you engage with folks from in Canada and across the US? What sort of trends are you seeing, and yeah, what brings you excitement there?
Yeah. Well, I think it's no secret that it's a challenging world to live in right now.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that we feel is so important is to continue to give people hope and not let people focus on only, the negative, but to really try to help people develop joy-centered organizations where they really are focusing on joy that brings resilience. If all you focus on is what's negative, that's just a way to bring your organization down. And it's not toxic positivity. You don't ignore challenges. You say, yes, we have challenges,
Yeah.
but I know we can meet them. And we're trying to give people tools to be able to manage early childhood organizations in a way that gives people
Yeah.
hope and that builds on
Hmm.
positives. I'll just give you a quick little story, if I can, from COVID.
Hmm.
When COVID hit, and we were at that time with Nature Explorer flying all over the country, doing workshops, doing
Yeah.
in-person
Hmm.
designs, and everything
Yeah.
changed. And I just said, okay, we're not going to manage out of fear. We're going to manage out of love and out of how can we help?
Hmm.
And let's look at what we can do to help.
Hmm.
And we developed, brand new ideas that we never would have, like how can we do online workshops? Now everybody's doing online workshops, but back then they
Yeah.
weren't. And how can we do some of our designs remotely? And it turned out that we're still using those things that we developed, but instead of just saying we're going to just be in despair and be negative, we're going to look for what we can do to
Hmm.
help. And I really believe that in organizations, if people need a leader that
Yeah.
says we can do
Yeah.
this, whatever the problem is, we can figure out a solution if we work together. And so part of what we're trying to do with Exchange is to have enough articles that um, really help people be able to bring that kind of positive
Yeah.
leadership. And even like you wrote an
Yeah.
article for
Yeah.
Exchange about how we are all connected. I think that sense of we're not alone, we're not in this by ourselves. We all can support each other, and wherever we live in the world, we can find that common humanity and that connection that gives us strength.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I just can't help but just notice, how you bring in your heart-centered leadership and praxis, right, into every situation when you speak about the COVID, and how you sort of, sit back and work with your team, say, hey, okay, here's where we are. How can we help? Right. And so out of that, new initiatives came out there. And so I can also imagine that as a leader, and sort of asking on behalf of some young leaders perhaps that are taking a job, or working or listening to this podcast. You've been an educator, you've been a director, you've been a researcher, an executive. Which of those roles, and a mother and a grandmother as well, which of those roles have stretched you the most emotionally, Nancy? And what did it teach you about leading with courage and perhaps vulnerability?
Yeah. Well, I mean, every role was important and I learned something from every
Mhm.
one. I mean, I think we would all, any of us who are parents would always say our most important role is, our own
Mhm.
families because
Mhm.
that's we're the only one that can be their mother or their
Yeah.
grandmother. But being getting into a leadership role where I had a lot of people counting on
Yeah.
me did stretch me, and especially during the time of COVID, that was probably one of the times that I felt myself stretch the most, but I think I learned the most too.
Mhm.
And I learned how to be um, really honest with people about the
Yeah.
challenges, but hopeful. Because people were looking to me, and if I would have said, "Oh no, this is horrible," I
Mhm.
don't. But I really did believe. I knew we were going to be
Yeah.
okay if we just stuck to our values and principles, and we really did focus on, our work is here to help
Yeah.
others. How can we do that?
Hmm.
And that did stretch me. Could I practice what I'd preached all those years? Could I really put it into practice? And
Yeah.
we did it, and it worked. And I think then other people, we have now,
Mhm.
good leaders who've now stepped
Yeah.
into leadership roles. As I retired as the CEO, and then now I'm doing just the editor in
Yeah.
chief role. But the new CEOs, I mean, they learned that too along with me as we went through the challenges. So I guess my message to anybody is don't be afraid of the challenges, because they teach you the most.
Don't be afraid of the challenges. I think that's a message I wanted to hear this morning. Of challenges that continue to come my way on my own journey as a leader too. So thank you for that message. And you, Nancy, again worked across the US, Canada, and around the world through different sort of organizations, whether it's Nature Explorers, Exchange Press. No doubt you've carried and heard a lot of stories from around the world. And so, is there a story from a teacher, perhaps, or a parent, or a community member, or even a child that you may have met during the way that you carry with you when you do your work, or even when the work feels hard? What does that story, if any, remind you of, and how does it sort of, encourage you to keep going?
Yeah, I have so many, because you've been with the World Forum, but I think my first World Forum was so instructive, because it can be a concept that all people are underneath the same,
Mhm.
but until you really meet people from all over the world, you haven't experienced that. And it was so
Mhm.
transformational to have conversations with people and think, we are dealing with the same kinds of things wherever we live in the world. We are really very
Oh,
similar. The heart that we carry for children and what we want for our children is the same no matter where we live. That was hugely inspirational for me, and really changed, how, well, all the quotes, like the Lillian quotes,
yeah,
Katz quotes about our children, all children are our
yeah,
children. We can't just look
yeah.
at the children right in front of us, but really we must care about all children, the whole world's children. And I mean, that I just believe that so much. But then a very specific conversation that I remember is back when we started working in Los Angeles, and we're bringing the beautiful Nature Explorer classrooms, and they really were like a little oasis of beauty in these hardscape,
Yeah,
big
yeah.
cities. I walked in, before the day had started, and the principal was out there just looking around, and she said, because of this gift you've
Mhm.
given us, I can now be the principal that I always knew I could be. I just needed this kind of space to be able to do it. And I thought, a lot of us are like that. That's what I hope we do with Exchange, with Nature Explorer. We're just helping to maybe give people some tools they need, but that will let them be who they're really meant to be, because we all have that in us to
Yeah.
be, a great teacher, a great principal, a great leader. We all have that in us, but we just need that support and help from others. We can't do it alone.
That's so true, and thank you for that. Right, like even just the first part of your story there, where you're talking about interacting with people from around the world and just getting this perspective that look, we're all trying to work around the same issues, right? Irrespective of where we're coming from around the world, the ways we approach, the ways we want to work with children, the ways we want to ensure that they have a lasting legacy. We're all trying to do that. I have quickly learned that, right? Even particularly starting in 2009 out in Belfast when I attended my first World Forum conference, I was like, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Wow. All of these amazing people are, monomaniacally focused on this particular thing, which is how do we ensure that children have got the best of all possible outcomes in this life, right? And so that's really, really exciting. And I take that practice every day too when I engage with folks. I'm always curious, what is it that I can learn, asking questions, because ultimately, as I say, through the Ubuntu language, that our destinies are inextricably linked. And right. And so thank you so much, Nancy. And even for that story in LA for saying, hey, for the principal to say, hey, now I can become the principal or the teacher that I've always wanted to be because, they now have this beautiful nature surrounding them. Nancy, you have written encouragement every day. I've got my copy now. Next time I see you, I'd love for you to sign my copy.
Oh. And then you sign your books for me.
Yes, I will too. And this book really, I went, okay, all right, let me take a step back and actually confess, wow, I'm going to do this on air. But when I got this book, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it daily. And then I sat there the next day. I was like, no, I want to know what's happening the next day and the next day and the next day. In fact, I want to know what's going to happen on my birthday. So this book has been so amazing because I just kept going and going and going and going and going. And this year as well, I started now this year. I'm like, okay, Patrick, take it a day at a time. But when I got here, I was like, I'm so excited. I want to see what's going on, And I quickly jumped to my birthday. I was like, okay, July 10th, what's going to happen? Like, stay soft. And I was like, yeah, what an encouragement and what a reminder. And so if you could pick, now this is a difficult one because I was like, well, man, you're going to ask this question, but if you were asked the same question, how do you do it? Because I love all of my kids, like my two kids, like, and all of the books I've done, I love them all the same. So now I'm going to give you perhaps a tough question as an author. If you were to pick just one of the nuggets that are in there to give to a teacher right now, which one would you choose and why?
I can't tell you exactly which day it is, and I think this theme kind of weaves through it, but I think one of the things that people have told me have been very helpful to them is paying attention to our self-talk, the way we talk to ourselves, and be sure that the self-talk is encouraging and not critical. I think that without realizing it, it's easy to fall into the trap where we're being very critical of ourselves. And that doesn't help anybody. And really, I believe we can only be as kind to other people as we are to ourselves. So a lot of the book it starts with you.
Yeah.
If you take good care of yourself and you're kind to yourself, then you can be kind to children. You can be kind to your fellow teachers. You can be kind to the people that you're in your organization if you're a leader. So I guess that would be my, if I had to pick.
I love it so much. And, my listeners out there, Encouragement Every Day by Nancy Rosenow, it's just an amazing book that you can use for daily reflections, whether you're an educator or a leader. I mean, Nancy, I'm reading just this part, and it says, stop comparing myself to others, right? And this is, one of the reflections there. Today, I'm reminding myself that I'm my own unique person. I do not have to have every skill someone else does, just as they won't have all of mine. My value as a human being isn't determined in comparison to others. That's a faulty ego-based way of thinking. Today, I celebrate who I am. What everyone else has or does detracts nothing from my worth. Gosh.
And Patrick, I wish we did that more in education. I worry about what's happening with children these days when we do so much testing and so much comparison. What's this person's score? What's that person's score? Instead of really just encouraging children to just think about themselves and their own growth. It doesn't really matter where you are in comparison to other people. What matters is that you're excited about learning and that you're continuing to learn. And I wish we did that more. In fact, what you said about, being curious about people, that is a message that I wish our world took to heart. I think there's a lot of fear about the other. I mean, we are hearing so many messages where people are so fear-based instead of, you're different than I am, and I'm curious. I want to get to know you. I want to learn more about you. I kind of feel like if everybody in the world could just attend World Forums, we'd have a better world, right?
That's so true. And Nancy, when you speak about that, the curiosity, I'll let you know now. And I do want to send you an email. I was like, well, I'll share with Nancy when we're having this conversation. This book, Encouragement Every Day, was an inspiration for me to go on my own journey and think about, okay, Patrick, after your memoir, what is the next step? And so Encouragement Every Day inspired me to begin a journey of putting together and writing a manuscript that has what I'm calling daily affirmations that are coming from the Ubuntu lens, right? And the Ubuntu being I am because we are. To speak precisely to what you have said, like if we only can have a little bit more curiosity, if we only can ask a few more questions about what we're calling the other, we'll then recognize that, well, you know what? We're all striving towards the same pathway. And I said it earlier on that I have learned that our destinies are inextricably linked, right? And so, Nancy, I am so inspired. I've been inspired. I continue to be inspired by this book, even as I go through my own journey of thinking about affirmations that are Ubuntu lens. That I hope to put out there for educators, for leaders in particular, to reflect, to ask questions, and to just continue being curious.
Oh, you're giving me goosebumps, and I can't wait for it to come into life. And I want to make sure we're spreading the word to educators because those kinds of messages are so needed. I'm so excited you're doing that.
Thank you. And it's because of you, right? And this is one thing that I've been nervously excited about this conversation, right? It's like I so respect the work that you have done. You're such an inspiration to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what question is going to be the right question? Like I want to ask everything. But importantly, when you're sitting with someone who inspires you, who is sort of motivated you to do a whole lot of things in a way that perhaps Nancy, you didn't know that about you. Like the impact that you've had on my life has been tremendous. It's been amazing. And when I got my copy, like I said, I was like, okay, I want to know what's happening every single day. And then I was like, okay, now January 2026, like you start again and you make sure that you go through on a day-by-day basis. And so flowers to you, Nancy. You're right, flowers to you, and thank you for...
All right, let me tell you something because this is how the universe works and how we inspire each other. And I bet you don't know this, but I was in a board meeting with you. I think it was World Forum, and you were talking about how you realized that when you have something to say, it's important to speak up and let people know. And I was just getting ready, to take that step where I retired for a while when my husband was going through a lot of health issues. And I thought, what can I do during that time? And I thought, Patrick said, speak up and put it out there. And that inspired me to write that book. So look at how that is going full circle.
Wow. That's amazing. And I said, yeah, and I'm reading this book. I'm like, wow, right?
Well, I mean, a lot of it came from what you said about we have to be brave and put our, our thoughts out there. And
Wow. Now that gives me a lot of goosebumps. But yeah, now how do I even end this? Nancy, I don't usually let my guests go off the show without answering this particular question, which is, if you were to have dinner with 3 people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Oh, yes. I've asked people that question too, and I've always thought that is such a hard question to, but I'll tell you, okay, the first one, when I was a little girl, the first book that I ever got out of the school library when I could actually read a full book was a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt.
Okay.
And I thought, that was very inspiring for me. I think I grew up, I'm pretty old. So when I was a little girl, women didn't, I didn't see women in leadership roles as much. And to see what she did, and I have read her books, she went through a hard time when there was another pandemic and when there was wars and, and she wrote a book about we learn by living, or I forget the exact title, but I read that during the pandemic again. Anyway, I think she'd be someone that I would like to talk with. Probably, a lot of people say this, but because of my faith, I guess I would want to talk with Jesus if I could do that, because to me, that's it's a personal thing, but a part of my life. And another person that's always really inspired me is Nelson Mandela, because I would like to find out, how did he do that? How did he go through all that time in prison and not lose his hope? How did he not become bitter? How did he transcend that experience, but come out the other end,
Yeah.
and use it for good. I would like to hear about that too.
That's fantastic. I mean, your list is amazing. Eleanor Roosevelt, Jesus, and Nelson Mandela. I've got tons of questions for Jesus too because of my faith. I'm like, yeah, well, this and this and this. I'd love if I can be your plus one on that conversation. I'd love.
I'd love to have you come. Let's do it.
Ask those questions, and yeah, Tata Nelson Mandela too, right? Like, how do you spend so much time in prison, not lose hope, but then come out of prison and still have this, attitude of forgiveness and wanting to move and unite people and move forward? That's a fantastic way of life, and a great list. And so, Nancy, looking ahead, what is one perhaps hopeful vision that you have, perhaps for the early childhood sector for the next 10 years? What would you want to see happening? How would you want educators to connect with children, families, and communities with the natural world?
So I'm really loving what I'm doing now, being able to just focus on exchange. And we've brought a new way of delivering the content of exchange where every Monday, exchange members get exchange community voices. So they're just 3 articles that come to them every Monday. And I'm hoping will bring a little inspiration. Then you don't have to wait for months. People were telling us when it was just the printed magazine, we had to wait for months to get it. And then we had so many articles all at once. And so I'm excited we're able to bring it to them, weekly. And one of the 2 things we're really, we've been focusing on is supporting play-based learning, not taking play away from children, because all the research shows us, we know young children must have time to play. That's how they learn best. We just did a big conference about that, but I want to keep that theme going and do everything we can to support that worldwide, just helping everybody understand the value of that and the value of connecting with the natural world. In fact, the next conference that Exchange is going to have next December is going to be about nature for children every day. How do we make sure children just have that as part of their daily lives? And I think those 2 themes are ones I feel very strongly about and want to do everything I can to help support that worldwide.
That's beautiful. Nancy Rosenow, thank you so much for your time, for coming onto the Voices Listed podcast show. Nancy, allow me to give you virtual flowers for the incredible human being that you are, the inspiration you bring, the motivation that you give to all of us working in the early childhood space. And thank you for your leadership. Thank you for...
Oh, and right back at you, Patrick. And thank you for your inspiration and everything you do. We need more people like you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, folks. You've been listening to my conversation with Nancy Rosenow. Thank you for joining. Until next time, have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the Voices Listed podcast with Dr. P. Mac. I hope you enjoyed insights that came out of this conversation. Keep your notifications on. Our next episode will be dropping soon. Thank you and enjoy.